Have been supervising interns here at Integral Studies and in Holos Institute, New Perspectives, and some other centers. And really am glad that Daniela is doing these series for you. So you can get just a taste. So I'm just going to start first with sort of lay out what I'm going to present. I'm going to, first of all, in a minute read a poem. Because what I would really like to be with and talk about how I both do therapy and supervision, especially supervision. I see it as a mentorship model, which means of calling forth whoever is in practicum or internship, whoever they are, to call them forth into their own path, and really do enjoy that. And so I'm going to talk about sort of some of the cornerstones of how I see psychotherapy, some of the lenses I look through. I mean, what I'm going to talk about tonight isn't necessarily on that list, because recently being the last 5 years, I have been very intrigued with some of the energy psychology, some of the mind-brain research, which I'm not going to talk about that tonight, and have trained in some things that really work from a somatic but even a deep body energetic system. So that's what I'm choosing to talk about. I mean, I love working with kids. I work with kids and adolescents, do Santre, play therapy, drama therapy. Probably my oldest client right now is the 91-year-old amazing woman. So I like the spectrum. So first I'm going to talk about sort of how I see therapy, the lenses, the integral synergistic lens, which is a really interesting, I love words, and of course we're at California Institute of Integral Studies, and synergy, because part also of what I'm doing recently is I'm doing a year-long course with an integral transformation. It's not psychotherapy, it's a deep work with Craig Hamilton, who is actually in Santa Rosa. And so it's made me think about what is this that we do, how can we do this from the widest possible perspective, so that as in my write-up, that we gain insight, we gain clarity, and yet often there's a place that's just a holdout. That's just, we call it being stuck. And how to be curious about that, because we can't push through it, and how to see that there are ways to support that. And especially from a somatic energetic place is what I'm going to talk about tonight. So I'm going to start with first a poem by Rumi. It is called Listening. What is the deep listening? Sama is a greeting from the secret ones inside. The heart, a letter. The branches of your intelligence grow new leaves in the wind of this listening. The body reaches a peace. Rooster sounds come, reminding you of your love for dawn. The reed flute in a singer's lips, the knack of how spirit breathes into us, becomes as simple and ordinary as eating and drinking. The dead rise with the pleasure of listening. If someone can't hear a trumpet melody, sprinkle dirt on his head and declare him dead. Listen and feel the beauty of your separation, the unsaleable absence. There is a moon inside every human being. Learn to be companions with it. Give more of your life to this listening. As brightness is to time, so you are to the one who talks to the deep ear in your chest. I should sell my tongue and buy 1,000 ears when that one steps near and begins to speak. And so that's really where I begin. I mean, endeavor to begin every morning, but where I really begin as seeing what being a therapist, and being a supervisor is the deep listening that doesn't leave out any levels. So would you just help me out there? So yeah, so I'm not, so yeah, so really, if we brought that down at the very top of that, it would say heart. But it is, because this listening is really listening with the organ of our heart, which is not an organ of sentimentality. It's, and heart, in playing with words, has ear, hear, heat, and art. And so, and I'll just read what I wrote. To listen with the heart requires us not only to have an ear, but to hear with our whole being. And our whole being is about emotions, thoughts, body, subtle body, all our connection to transcendence. But to listen with our whole body, to the whole body, whoever is in front of us. And it's energy work. And energy work is not some sort of woo-woo thing. We are energy. I'll show you some pictures of Alex Gray. I love the artist Alex Gray, who shows that right now there's a flow of our blood, there's a flow of our heartbeat, there's a flow of all our synapses, there's a connection between us, all of that. And all of that is the deep listening. And working with the whole human being, which means the body. I'll share a little bit. I did some craniosacral work on me and training, and I became so aware how my years as a psychotherapist, even though I do somatic work, has trained me out of really being in my body. And it's a hot-blooded endeavor, meaning that anything and everything can be present and can happen. My work with kids certainly is that, because they are acting things out, there's movement, but even sitting with adults, there is so much cooking, so much alchemy, and above else, it's art. I am going to, at the toward the end, I'm going to show you some skills or techniques, actually do a demonstration if someone is willing to do that with me. But starting at the bottom, presence is much more important than technique. And these, because it's in the relationship, it's in the presence. And this is actually a quote from the Craniosacral training, a book that I did with a man, Monaji, who is in Hawaii. Learn to listen, sit still, to wait until your dust is settled and your air has become clear. Wait for the deep stillness and then start. And so these are the places that I begin from. These are the places, and above all, go slowly. You can't go too deep, but you can go too fast. Because often, well, myself, and also working with interns, they'll say, well, nothing happened. And it's like, a whole lot happened. How many times have you been seeing them? Oh, 3. And it's like things, and then, I mean, not that things don't go deep, but it's like how to go slow, how to just let things unfold, and pay attention to everything. And that means everything. The air in the room, a minute movement that a client makes, the movement that happens inside of you as you speak. So it is really an art of listening. And then this is an integral statement of looking through an integral lens. Treat everyone and every part of everyone as equal. Because I think sometimes from an integral perspective, we think transcendence is better. No, it's just different. And things do pack into them. But everything, if we said that our liver is equal to our kidneys, we'd be in trouble. And there are things that we say are expendable in our body, but do we really know? So it's like how to really have everything be as equal. Does that mean everything holds the same weight? No. But everything, every cell in the body has consciousness. Every minute structure of the dream body, which is our subtle body, is a hologram, which means everything is contained there. So this is, because one of the things, and this is a bit of who I am, but it also is what I really see in working with interns and with clients is to get in touch with how you see the world. What are your highest, these are things, the one is a quote, the other are things that I've just pieced together. How do you see the world? It's always growing and changing. But so that when you're doing therapy and living your life, there's a perspective. So if you want to do the next slide. And this is part of, this is actually on my brochure that I gave you. And because again, this is, you could say my mission statement. But again, I really encourage all of you to put down, how do you see all of this? And I just did this one recently, and things change. But these are things I truly hold as true. Not the truth, but I hold them as true. That reconnecting to your vital self and becoming free to thrive in your life and your relationships is what therapy is all about. Of course, lots of things happen in therapy. From healing from trauma to getting clear to changing habits and behavior to breaking addictions. But it's all, in one of the ways that I hold it, is it's really reconnecting to the vital self that each of us are. And the experiences of our life's trauma, and just sometimes social conditioning, experiences separate us. And we're not integrated, we're not whole. And I really have seen that just like the body has an innate healing, and I mean innate, yes, there's disease and disease needs treatment sometimes, but our body heals. I was busily slicing some wonderful tomatoes and sliced my finger and put a little ointment on it and I'm covering it so nothing foreign comes in, and it will help. And our psyche has that capacity as well. This is very much in studying therapy, but studying Jungian therapy, is that belief and of sandry and images and working with children, that you can't always, and it doesn't mean perfect wholeness, but things can move to a different alignment and a vitality. So what do we do as therapists? Who heals? Or what is healing? And certainly we help create a space for that. We have our windows on it, but for healers, we're conduits. Because there is an innate something that it is an amazing thing. And having a supportive space and relationship can activate this healing capacity. And therapy can be a supporting space. But often we need that supporting space. And on the bottom, it says something like, and the change happens in your inner world, but also in your outer world of action. Because this is not just, I shouldn't say not just, therapy is an inner journey, but one of the things that brought me to Craig Hamilton's spiritual work is that it's very much an inner journey, but what he said through his years of being in communities and ashrams and living there, that often something happened internally, but people's lives and actions weren't really changed. And so it's that place of, it's an inner, because it's not a mistake we're here in a body and living this life. And so it's about, so that goes hand in hand. It's not, again, it's integral, it's not dualistic. So just an image, because I think images speak more than words. I'm looking at this wonderful image mirrored behind me too. But you could say that's the central sun. You could say that's the sun inside of each of us. That place of vitality. So just a little bit more about integral and why it intrigues me so. I mean, it's certainly not a new word, but because integral means that it's essential or necessary for completeness and for the entire whole. So it means that everything here is integral. It leaves nothing out. And again, and I know from who we are as humans to the world, that it's all integral. So what's sort of in my thinking of this is, that's why I have a non-pathological approach to psychotherapy. Not that I don't see suffering, and not that sometimes naming it as bipolar or naming it as the variety of things we name isn't useful. It's useful, not just in communicating, but it sometimes going in with the lens and saying, oh, this is here. But really no judgment. It's about being curious and having everything there. And I know you've probably been here at CIS have heard this many times. And yet, and maybe I'm slow, because it is just beginning to dawn on me how absolutely essential it is that it includes both the lower ordinary and the spiritual transcendent states of consciousness. And that might sound like a judgment, I mean like a hierarchical statement. No, it's not. It's just that lower is, there are different states of awareness and being. And yet, they are all essential. Because I have known if you just go for the transcendent, you can do things so sometimes real healing doesn't, because sometimes real healing has to happen way down deep. And what I really love about this, and this is what's really dawning, this is always all there. Even if it's always, and I know it, so we talk a lot about integration. And that is the act of combining into an integral whole. And a little while I'm going to talk about, well, I'll just say now, because there are parts of us that get separated psychologically, and we call that disassociation, we call that being triggered when something happened, we call that traumatic memory, we call that feeling of being in the grasp of something. And that's a bit of what I mean by being stuckness, of being in that separateness where, and this is from somatic experiencing, one of the ways they talk about trauma or the separateness is that, again, our brain, which is really our whole nervous system, of course the frontal lobe, is what lets us take in information, process it, make a decision. But when we are in a place of the separation that comes from trauma, our frontal lobe goes like this, and we're reacting out of our limbic system. We're acting out of fright, flight, and freeze. And so part of when we get stuck, it's because something is separated. And how do you integrate it? I mean, talking about it helps. Symbols help. And I'm just going to present another kind of working with the body energy system that can allow the innate healing of that to level, and so that things can flow. But, you know, we talk a lot about integration. Integration means bringing all parts of ourselves into the whole so they can interact and they can flow. It's another image. This is actually Buckminster Fuller, who I really, this isn't his, but this is someone who did a buckyball, which is, again, all the pieces are the same, and yet when they're connected, it's an amazing, amazing whole. And this leads us into synergy, where the parts, synergy is the effect of integration. Synergy is the effect of being integral. It's, and which means that all of the parts are greater, or the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And this is, I mean, the parts, if you just put those in certain ways and count them up, and that would be one sum. But putting them together, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So that's the effect of being integral. Do you want to, in synergy, and it's, again, I think I've said most of this, but except there's really something, and this is coming out of some thinking around Buckminster Fuller, that he coined the word synergism. That's from what and that it is, when the behavior of whole system is unpredicted by the behavior of the parts taken separately. And it's emergent behavior, which means something new can happen. Because sometimes I think, again, when we get stuck, or even in our world, we go, nothing new can happen. But there is emergent behavior. And as Buckminster Fuller, this was someone who wrote about him, put that this term became the opposite of entropy. And we know all of entropy is that all systems fall apart. And this is like, wow. And we've come to believe that that's the complete ruling paradigm. But there can be emergent behavior where things actually come together. And from Latin, synergy is the joining of the divine will and the human will. Or to say it differently, however we hold divine will, source and the human will, that there's something more at work. Whether we call it the psyche, we call it God, we call it. So, synergy. And this is again of Buckminster Fuller. Many people can hold the parts, many people can hold the whole, but few people can hold the parts and the whole. And that is that strange thing, because it's parts and the whole. It's of holding that. And that's what we're called on as we do this work, is to work with the parts, whatever is presented, from the smallest minuteness, but holding the whole, holding, again, that vital energy that is in this unique person that is unbalanced in some way, or has caused discomfort, or sometimes is tremendously traumatized. But there is that push toward having things line up so that it can be integral, synergistic. It can flow. This is another image. This doesn't do it justice, but does anyone know what this is? It's a fractal. And a fractal is holographic. If you went into any part of that, everything is there. You can see a little bit if you just imagine. I mean, there's the smaller ones, but if you go and you see these moving, and they do them mathematically, which I don't understand the math, but where they keep doing the same iteration over and over and over again, and it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. But yet, in every piece, no matter how small or how large it gets, it is the same image. It's like the whole is there. So I'll just, again, this image, because we don't necessarily experience living in the flat world, I mean in the linear world this way. But this is what things are made of. And then this is Alex Gray. And did I spell energy right? Psychology. But he does these amazing pictures. These are all of the vital energy movements in our body and our being. And you can see thoughts moving, feelings. We extend out. So this is who we are, and this is what we're working. When someone comes to see us, I don't see this, thank goodness. Because it would, I have friends that can see in ways, And it isn't always a blessing, because in a sense, but that is what's there. And so what I'm going to talk about is that as we go, where I'm honing into tonight is some particular ways that can help move the energy. But just sitting in the presence of someone, listening, following, noticing when they are, how the words they use, the movements they make. Again, so we talked about that deep listening. That you can move energy without doing the particular kind of techniques. And when you move energy, what it means is to just imagine that if something is stuck in our energy field, or in this person's energy field, and when it's stuck, it goes around and around, it causes discomfort, it causes imbalance. When it really wants to flow, when things are flowing, it's here, life is moving, we often know ourselves what the next step is, when we learn to listen deeply. So what happens to us? Because I would imagine that none of our energy is flowing completely in alignment to who it is, who we even desire and want to be, let alone who we really are. And because things get stuck, and when they get stuck, it's because, and we move into a survival state. Because whatever, I know we all know this place that something happens, we call it a trigger, reminds us of something, and it is as if that's happening, and we move into flight, fright, or flee, even though we might just be standing there and no one would even know it, but we lose connection with that energy flow, and something is cut off from the whole. And talking about it and thinking about it, analyzing helps to some degree. But this place doesn't, it's not its language. It's not its language. Because we can try to reason with it and even have all the reasons why we know that really isn't true. And yet there's another part of us that says, cannot hear any of that. Because it is in this place. Because we generalize to conserve energy, meaning that when something happens, if we were in the jungle and you knew that every time you walk by this particular part of the tall grass that there was a tiger's family living there, you would generalize it whenever you saw anywhere that kind of tall grass. You probably would walk around it. So we generalize to conserve energy. But what that means, or what I found, or one way I look at it is, then we create what I call a shorthand code book of life. Of this is the way things are. I can never open up in front of a large group of people because I will be attacked. Well, that comes from something that happened once, or something you were told, or your ancestors were attacked. And so we have this code book of life. I will never have enough. Well, that's both true and not true. In the sense of whatever enough is, it could always be true if enough is never something you can't get. Because you can never get enough, because you can't. So we have these beliefs, and usually they're below the surface. We sometimes even say them, I am just not an analytical thinker, even though that was just an analytical thought because you thought about yourself. We say these things all the time, and we take them as our reality and truth. Sometimes, when prejudice, in certain ways, we take them as the reality and truth that's even beyond us, and they keep us stuck and disconnected. So I'm going to ask you all, because we're going to move into another place. If you would, if it feels right, write down one limiting belief you have about yourself, or just hold it in mind. And you don't need to connect it to, oh, I got that because. And write down one resource. That means one strength you have, or one place you go for strength. So again, this is actually a quote from, I'm going to talk, well right now I'm going to, are there any questions first, because before I move anything? This is actually, yes.
When you're saying the limiting belief, one of the things is that we might not even hold it consciously, right? We might even disagree with it.
We might absolutely disagree with it. Because part of us, it's like, because it's set off here, it has a life of its own. So there might be a part of us that really, from a centered place, really doesn't believe, can even argue with it. But it's cut off, it has a life of its own. There's a book by Donald Kalshit called The Inner World of Trauma, which I really recommend. But one of the things he says is that these limiting beliefs come from a way to make sense and cope with life. And of sort of, I mean, he talks about it, he says, and so when you begin to try to act in a way that is counter that, it's kind of like that part says, what do you mean? We made that decision all those years ago for good reason. After all that time, you're going to go out and talk in front of a group? Come on now. Stay with me. And so those limiting beliefs become, as he says, they become our captors. They started by being our protectors. And so to go against them, and the resistance can be brutal. It's almost like something else takes over. And that's where we often need adequate support. Therapy being one, body work, yoga, meditation, hiking, friends. But because with the proper support, the brain, the nervous system, the psyche, and the body, again, have the intrinsic capacity to heal from trauma and dysfunctional emotional conditioning. Sometimes when we see, especially the limiting beliefs, and we are able to have a space, I call it a gap between the thought, where it's not just automatic. That's a point that we have a choice. We have a choice, either do something different, not act on that, not follow that thought out into a scenario. But until we see until we have that gap, it's automatic. Until we wake up, I don't mean literally wake up and we say, how did I find myself there again? I swore I was never going there again. In fact, I worked that through, didn't I? And yet it is a process. But every time that happens, we can build that gap. But so I'm going to, and again, just a reminder of this. And all the centers, and of course he draws the chakra energy centers. But when things are blocked, you could imagine the energy spinning like this. And there's pain there. I mean, if it's a physical something, I mean, we feel the pain. And we have to stay off our feet. But when it's psychic, we feel that pain too. It's called depression, big anger that's bigger than the situation, anxiety. That's really what the DSM is. It's a book of pathology and the way we're suffering the soul. So I'm going to talk about 3 approaches, 3 systems of learning that in the last 5 years have come across my path. And I chose them, but it wasn't like I said, oh, this is what I'm going to, these are the next things on my list. The first is craniosacral therapy, which I don't do as a psychotherapist. I know psychotherapists that do have integrated that practice. I don't. I do craniosacral work. And how many of you know craniosacral therapy? It's powerful, powerful. Because if you, we all know that again with that picture, so we breathe, we all know we have breath. We all know we have a heartbeat. We also have a cranial wave. If someone is lying down and you hold their feet and you are relaxed, because if you're not relaxed, you don't feel it. You can feel the wave, again, Alex Gray's picture. You can feel the wave of the energy, cranial wave, moving. You can feel how it sort of, on one side it kind of takes a little longer to get there. You can, the more I study this, I mean, I'm still, compared to, I don't compare, but my teacher who has been doing this for years and years and years, I mean, I walk into his, when he's in town, he says, Inge, you bumped your head, and I go, don't you know, are you psychic? He said, no, I can see and feel that your energy is right there, not moving. I mean, it's torquing, it's out of balance. And so, in the craniosacral world, it's called the breath of light, because we have the breath of air. You could say our heartbeat is a breath of fluid, of blood exchange. And this is, again, Alex Gray, the breath of light. And craniosacral work, it's non-manipulative, and the touch is the weight of a dime. If you put a dime in your, which take, you know, it's really, you bear, because this is very, you don't interfere with it, you support it. And so this is one thing that not only physically, but emotionally can help energy be unstuck without necessarily talking about it. Because what it does, well, it does many things, but in words, it relaxes an overactive nervous system. And just living in this world, we all have an overactive nervous system. But wherever we have anxiety, so it allows it to come down. So anxiety and worry can dissipate. It reunites the mind, body, spirit, which is in their split. Again, Alex Gray's picture. It rebalances your body, not just physically. And this is from a brochure, and it's done where clients are fully clothed. In fact, so it's energy work, but it's actually touching. It's touching. It's feeling the cranial wave, and you don't move it. You just help it support itself to move into alignment. So that's one thing. The other thing is something, I just did this training with a very strange name called brain spotting. David Grand, who is someone who's big in the EMDR field, and he, through his research and also observation, and I've observed this too, that when someone is talking about something intense, whether it is an intense pleasure or an intense pain or trauma, that eyes will fix. If, you know, that they'll be talking and it's like their eye gets fixated. And what they have found that brain spotting is thinking of a resource or a trauma separately, but if you think of a resource and you follow with your eye until that resource experience changes in intensity. And that's called a brain spot. And what they've done, it's shorthand for, and part of me believes this and part of me wonders what's you know, and even David Grand and Robert Weiss, it's like, not to get too literal about it, but it's the body's energy way of saying, there's the spot. Not necessarily that there's a spot in our brain there, or there's a spot in our, but there's the spot where things are stuck. Kind of like the cranial, of saying, oh, that's where it's torquing. And of doing that and moving between the distress and and the resource can really loosen things up. I took the training from David Grant and Robert Weiss, and Robert Weiss has worked a lot with vets returning from Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, and he's worked with vets that are like black ops, so they can't talk, and they're still in the service. They can't talk about the trauma because they have security things. And so he has done this work where the person doesn't tell a story, but just says, this is where the distress is. And when you do it, you feel things open and change and bring it into the resources. So this is something that I'm just beginning. I'm not really using that in my practice as a technique so much, but we'll continue to train and be with how to support the movement of energy. Because when you do this, you can feel things change. When you watch someone, you notice a blink or this, and you don't even need to talk, but you can ask them what happened right there. And they'll say, oh, I just sunk into some sadness there, but it feels like it's flowing. So this, just wanted to share that, but I'm, yeah, and this is, I'm going to, if someone is willing to, well, we're all going to do this. One person is going to do it with me, EFTA. Does anyone know emotional freedom technique? Yeah. Well, EFTA is emotional freedom technique. I can't remember his name. Do you remember his name? Who? Yeah. But he was actually like an engineer that realized that there's, again, using the body meridians from Chinese medicine, and that they're connected with organs and they're also connected with emotion. But of using it in a way that, again, they did a lot of work with vets and PTSD that could, by the client touching the point, could really relieve the fear, the anxiety, and it clears internal blocks, just disrupts the body systems. I have stayed with Dr. Henry Grayson, who's actually from out of New York City. He still is. He had his own psychoanalytic school. He knew David Bohm, the physicist, who very much about the holographic implicate order, and through his own work of really again saw that talking, sometimes if you just keep talking in an analytical way, it can actually reinforce things. It reinforces that very circuit. And after a while, it's like that becomes our story. That becomes us. I am the person who lived through this, or I have this particular anxiety in my life, or I learn in this particular way, so that means I am defective. Or they all go for, I'm out of balance, I'm defective, and there's no way out. And so what I did is I studied with him, and then I did a round of work with him by phone, actually, because I really wanted to experience myself what this kind of clearing was like. And it was very profound, a lot like craniosacral work with words. So, if you would, because okay. Last picture before we do the demonstration. This is Alex Gray. This is called Healing. And it really captures so much of what I really said. As you see, there's a figure there with a heart. And with the exchange of energy, with deep listening, with a lot happening. open before we do sort of a demonstration, and you'll all be doing it, and I'll walk you through. That's why I had you write down a limiting belief and a resource. If you desire. It's nonverbal. You don't, even the person doing it doesn't need to show the process. They can if they want to a little bit afterwards. So, but any questions? So did I have a volunteer? Okay. And do you have in mind both a resource and a limiting belief?
Definitely have a limiting belief and pretty good with the resource.
Okay. So first just take a minute and take some breaths. I'm going to ask, you all can do this, and when we do the meridian points, feel free to touch them. Feel free to work this yourselves. So just take a breath and just bring in the resource. Would you be comfortable if we do this, just following the eye movements until your
okay.
resource? Okay. Okay. I'm just going to move it slowly. Tell me when the feeling of where you feel the support of the resource gets stronger.
It gets weaker over there, so probably was strongest at that end.
Okay, so just let me know. Put it right there.
Sure.
Okay, so focus on this. I'm going to move it and just focus behind this, to a point behind my pointer. Just breathe, see what happens with the resource. As you hold that, just say out loud what your limiting belief is.
That in situations I can't do better than the guy my mom was married to, than he would do.
So your belief is that you can't surpass the man your mother was married to.
Right. Can't in both the sense it would be unable to, and be awful consequences if I did.
Yeah, so that's where it comes from. Would it, and let me know if these words that fit sort of without reference to the situation.
Okay.
I can't fully step into my own power.
Seems true.
Does that feel like it? Okay. So let's start this. Put your hand right here in the flat of your chest. This is the meridian point for the thymus gland, which is the high heart. It's also the place, the thymus gland is about our immune system. And just breathe in and say to yourself or out loud if it feels comfortable, I completely love and accept myself, even if I believe I can't step into my own power. And if that's too big of a statement, I'm open to having love and acceptance of myself, even if I can't step into my own power.
Not to be difficult, but both of those run flat into my limiting belief.
Okay. Okay. So, because I mean, this is actually something to say. Let me ask you this: are you worthy to have this belief removed, to be cleared?
Yeah, get a clear path on that. Sure.
Okay. So, what would it be like to just, without the words, to just put your hand here and say, I am worthy to be cleared of this belief that I can't step into my own power.
So, I'm worthy to be clear of this belief that I can't step into my own power.
Okay, so just take a deep breath and let it go. One more breath. And now take 2 fingers of either hand and put them right at the center of your forehead. And say to yourself your belief. Just let it be there, just in whatever comes.
The old one?
The old one, yeah. And tell me when you're ready to begin clearing.
It is softened. Should I say the newer softened form?
Well, let's not, we'll do that at the very end.
Okay.
So just be with what's there. And maybe say it out loud.
I can't step into my own power fully.
I believe that I can't fully step into my own power.
I believe that I can't fully step into my own power. I carry the belief that I can't step into my own power. I partly believe that I can't step into my own power.
So it's already shifting. So let's move your fingers to either side, right above your eyebrow. Down a little, right above that, yeah, right there. Just take a deep breath and say silently or out loud, I release all fear related to this belief that I cannot fully step into my own power.
I release all fear related to this belief that I cannot step into my own power.
And take a deep breath and let it go. Your fingers gently to the corner of your eye. I release all anger and rage related to this belief that I cannot fully step into my own power. And say that out loud.
It's okay, I say it in the way that seems truest. Or is it close? It needs to be verbatim?
It doesn't need to be verbatim, just the anger and rage.
Okay. I feel fully and release all anger and rage related to this limiting belief.
That you cannot step fully into your own power.
That I cannot somehow step into my own power.
So take a deep breath. And just let it go. One more breath. Gently move your fingers right underneath your eye. And say in whatever way this fits, I release all anxiety related to this belief that I cannot fully step into my own power.
I access and release all anxiety related to this belief that for some reason I wouldn't be able to step into my own power.
Take a deep breath. Just let it go. One more breath. Now gently move your fingers right underneath your nose, above your upper lip. I release all embarrassment and guilt related to this belief that I cannot fully step into my own power.
I'm willing to release without fear and do release all embarrassment and guilt related to this belief that I might not be able to step into my own power.
I'll just take a deep breath. One more breath. Gently move your fingers underneath your lower lip, right by your chin. I release all shame related to this belief that I'm not able to fully step into my own power.
I have a legitimate cause to and do release all shame related to this belief that I would not be able to step into my own power.
So take a deep breath. Let it go. Okay, one more breath. Gently move 2 fingers underneath your arm about 4 inches down the opposite side. I release all undue worry and concern related to this belief that I might not be able to fully step into my own power.
I release all undue worry and concern about this belief that I might not be able to step fully into my own power.
So take a deep breath. One more breath. Gently move your fingers, 2 fingers on both hands right underneath your rib cage. I release all sadness and sorrow related to this belief that I might not be able to step into my own power.
I release, all sadness.
All sadness and sorrow.
I release all sadness and sorrow related to this belief that I might not be able to step into my own power.
Take a deep breath. One more breath. When it feels, when you're ready, take your right hand and place it back, the flattest part of your chest, and your left hand right here. Just breathe. You don't need to speak, but you breathe, just breathe in love and acceptance. When you breathe out fear. Just do that several times and let me know when you're finished.
I've got the instinct to ask you if there's one more around just real terror that I could release.
Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah. Let's release that right from this place of love. Let's release this from right from this place of I release all real terror related to this belief that I cannot step into my own power.
I acknowledge, feel, enter, experience, release all real terror related to this belief that I cannot step into my own power.
Just breathe in that love and acceptance and breathe out that terror. Just tell me when you're ready to move on. Okay. So take 2 fingers of both hands and place them right below your collarbone. Yeah, about right there. And just at this point, if you can, bring in that resource. Without speaking out loud, just be with, how would you like this belief to be of moving into your own power?
Do that again for me.
Well, of just letting come in, well, how would you like to be living from your own power? Whatever's there is fine. Just let it be. Just as you finish, just put both of your hands just on top of your head and just breathe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Check it. So anything that you'd like to share about that or not?
I thought it was really potent. I was really appreciating how systematic it was, because the issue had each of those things tangled up in it. There wasn't one of those that I did that it was like, oh, this isn't an issue for this. And it came very clear at the end of how I want to live is to step into that, do better than that example, role model, without a terror of something. I'm not sure what the terror is.
Yeah, terror is terror, yeah.
And without the belief somewhere still floating in there, I can do this again at home, that
Yeah,
I deserve
absolutely.
whatever it is I'm terrified of.
Absolutely.
If I step past it.
So anybody else, anything to share? I know we're almost finished here. Yes, what's your name?
Sarah.
Sarah, yes.
So I've practiced EFT and had some time with that technique.
Yes.
And this I really like. This is much more gentle.
Yes, that's the A, that's the adaptation. It's much more gentle, yeah.
So I will.
Yeah. Because EFT, you karate chop and you tap, and it's the same, but this is just more gentle. So anybody else? Any final questions?
I have a question about the what you did with the eye position at the
Yes.
beginning. Can you just explain?
Well, that's the brain spotting, which is, and you can do it yourself with anything, and you just follow. You have like a resource, like something that, a walk in the woods, spiritual teacher, whatever is a resource, and you can move it until it does get stronger. And then you just hold that position, and you just experience things open. You can also do it, and I wouldn't suggest on your own doing it with the biggest trauma in your life, because that's where you need support. You can also do the resource. You can also then put something, and it's really good for clearing things that are recent. Disagreement you had or something, a distress, and you can follow the eye movement until the distress comes into sort of, you just feel like, really, and then you just practice without thinking about it, and seeing how it changes. And if, of course, if it comes to a point where you get more distressed, you come back to the resource. But like I said, I've just done level 1 of this, and I'm very intrigued with it because EMDR is a flooding technique, which means you go into the trauma. Nothing wrong with that. For some people, it's like too much. Or this again, just like with EFT and EFT, EMDR and brain spotting, it's just a gentler way. But this is how we're made. I mean, this is, and it doesn't mean we don't talk about things. I find that when I sit with people, I can come to these same places of exchange without doing the technique, because I'm not wedded to this technique. I think it's wonderful. But most people who come to my office, I don't necessarily do this. Sometimes they introduce it, sometimes I don't. Sometimes people come because as I'm beginning to put myself out that I do this, come for this. So anything else? Well, thank you for letting me share this sort of even new budding way that I am and practice in the world. So, thank you.
Thank you.